Hello, this will be the first in a series of videos I'm going to make, which I'll create under a separate playlist. The title of these videos will be Labyrinth of the Psychopath. This is also a title of a book I'm currently working on at the moment. This will be my own insight and descriptions on how to deal with psychopaths. Now, I've had an interesting life in the sense that I've come into contact with psychopaths a lot during my time. I grew up in a quite a disadvantaged neighbourhood on the north side of Dublin, which was filled with criminality and basically a lot of problems. And the majority of the people there, even though it was a dangerous, bad neighbourhood, most of the people there were actually quite decent and had a lot of empathy and conscience and remorse. As I moved through life and I finished schooling, I went abroad and I played in a rock band, and I was in the music business for quite some time, and then I became a graphic designer. And then I worked on Wall Street in mostly investment banks for about 11 years, maybe less, about 7 or 9 years. And between that, the music business, and the current field, the art business I'm in now, though the art business is not too bad, it's not, many artists are not psychopaths, but the previous two fields, the music business and working in Wall Street, I came into contact with large numbers of psychopaths. I also came into contact with psychopaths through my private and through my own personal life and my family background and so on. And I've also studied and read a lot into psychopathy and the issue of psychopaths and sociopaths, which is the same thing. So this will be the first video in this series, and I'm going to talk about how to recognize a psychopath and how these psychopaths enter your life. Now, the first thing I have to say to anybody when dealing with the issue of psychopaths is forget your previous prejudices about psychopaths and sociopaths. They're not all serial killers. In fact, almost none of them are. That's an image that's been put out there by popular culture, and that image has been put out there for a reason, because many of the people who control society and control the mass media are themselves psychopaths, and they have a vested interest in making sure the rest of us think that everybody who's a psychopath is automatically Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a psychopath, but he was the extreme exception. The vast majority of psychopaths are completely socialized within normal society. They are not, bug-eyed serial killers. They are not crazies. They are not social misfits. They are not all criminals. In fact, very few of them are criminals in the actual legal, judicial sense. Many of the criminal ones will skirt around the margins of the law. Many of them do involve, in fact, most of them are involved in criminal behavior. But the majority of them, they just go through life without any sense of conscience, without any ability to feel for another person's feelings. And they will leave a trail of misery, psychological, emotional, financial ruin behind them as they move from one person to the next, or one entity from the next, one committee to the next, one group or one political party to the next. Now, according to most mental health professionals, 1 in every 22 people in Western society is a psychopath. Now let that sink in for a second. 1 in every 22 people is a psychopath. So if you know 22 people, the chances are you've encountered a psychopath. Most of us encounter psychopaths either through our work or through our relationships with people. Often in romantic relationships, psychopaths have an incredible ability to move from relationship to relationship and also keep multiple relationships going at the same time. This is not because they're Lotharios or they're even nymphomaniacs. It's because the actual sexuality and the actual relationship thing gives them a tremendous amount of power. Because they have no conscience, they could just basically ravage people's lives, move on to the next person, or ravage lots of people's lives at the same time, and it's just business. Now, the father of modern psychopathic study is a Canadian doctor by the name of Dr. Robert Hare, who's a PhD, and he works at the University of British Columbia. He's written some excellent books on the subjects, but the one I would recommend the most would be Without Conscience, which is an excellent book. And what really struck me about this book was at the very end, he comes to the conclusion that of all the mental health problems that ravage society, we almost no public money or research is put into psychopathy or sociopaths. And you consider, like, we spend vast amounts of money treating people who've been victimized by sociopath through depression. There's also other mental illnesses like schizophrenia, which get vast amounts of attention, both by the mental health profession and by public services. And yet, a schizophrenic and schizophrenia in general doesn't leave the world of devastation behind it that psychopaths do. And Dr. Hare at the end of the book, Without Conscience, comes to the conclusion that basically the powers that be in our Western society are mostly psychopaths, because we have created a situation where psychopaths, both in politics and big business, they rise to the top. And they have a vested interest in the rest of us either believing that psychopaths are all like bug-eyed axe murderers, or that they don't really exist. And this is a very important issue for them, because they basically don't want us to find out what a psychopath is, and we may start looking at our leaders and saying, uh-oh, and putting 1 and 2 together. Now, Dr. Robert Hare was the first person to quantify psychopathic behaviour. In the modern sense, you can create this checklist, which is actually very good. He basically working in a criminal psychology, criminal psychopathy background, doing very good clinical work on psychopathic criminals, which are the minority in prisons, believe it or not, and using things such as CAT scans to monitor psychopaths' brains when shown like harrowing images, and then comparing them to non-disordered people. He was able to determine that there was actually a neurological and a neuroelectrical trait to the psychopathic behavior, but still didn't actually get to the root of what actually causes someone to be a psychopath. Is it genetic? We're still out on that one. There seems to be a genetic element in some psychopathic behavior, but it's not always the case. I've known psychopathic parents who had non-psychopathic children, and non-psychopathic parents who had a psychopathic child. So there's still many questions out there about what causes psychopaths, but the bottom line is they are here, they do exist, and this series of videos that I'm putting together is to help you recognize them, how to deal with the experience if you've been psychopaths go through your life, and then try and gain something from it, because if you're in the early stages now of being a victim of a psychopath, it's very difficult to come to terms with the fact that there is an actual grand plan here that this happened for a reason, and it's good that you, in the long run, it'll probably improve you as a person. And that's probably why psychopaths exist, but there are other aspects as well. That's just my personal take. I'm now going to add something here that people will find controversial and might be very upsetting to people who have been victims of psychopaths, but one of the things you have to understand is that although I've made these videos to help people become aware of psychopaths and avoid them, psychopaths did not ask to be born this way, so it would be wrong, unless they've broken the law, to start a witch hunt against people who didn't ask to become psychopaths. That's not the same thing as saying we should feel sorry for them, not at all. But a lot of them wake up to the fact that they're a psychopath at age 14 when they look around, 14, 13, they look around and see that other people have certain things called empathy and feelings and emotions, and they generally don't have them, and they can't figure out also why maybe other people don't like them. And so what happens is, put yourself in the position of a psychopath. Would you either just like bottle yourself up or commit suicide, or would you say, okay, I'm obviously something wrong with me here, I'll just make best of it I can and try to make a life from this? And that's how really the whole process begins. So with these videos, I'm not advocating oppressing psychopaths. Unless they've broken the law, then they should face, judicial process. I'm not saying that we should witch hunt them. I'm just saying that we should learn about them. We should find out about them, avoid them if we can. If we have found them, they have come into it, the demon has knocked at our door, we have to generate a positive experience from it. Because let me explain something to you here. You're never going to get even with a psychopath. Never. It doesn't work like that. And another thing too is they're not out to get you out of any kind of malicious thing. It's just business with them. It's very difficult for a normal person to understand that a psychopath can ravage through your life, destroy you, and then move on to the next person. And when they think back to you, they're saying, oh, he was a cool guy, I liked him, or she was really nice, I really dug the time we had with her. But they'll still destroy that person. It's not personal. So you have to remember that a psychopath doesn't do it to you. It's not just you. They're doing it to lots of people. But it was just business. So you must then, as a victim, take this experience and process it the same way. I've done this mainly by, I've come to terms that I see psychopaths as basically specimens or laboratory samples. They're not really human to me. In fact, a psychopath isn't human, really. To me, a human being is love, conscience, remorse, empathy. Empathy is what makes a human being. They don't have it, so they may look like a human being, they may act like a human, but they're not really. They're some kind of other subspecies, and that seems to be a topic that's coming up more and more, and I'll talk about that in another video. So I'm not launching a crusade against psychopaths. I don't think they can be. In fact, I know they can never be cured. I just want to educate people that these things are out there, they exist, and the best way is just to shun them. And eventually, if more and more of us become educated about psychopaths, it won't be a problem in the world. In fact, it'll probably be less of a problem, because it won't be, the pickings won't be as easy for them. So stay alert. If you've been a victim, hold on to your sanity. You'll eventually get this through this. And there is a bigger picture in all this that it ultimately will serve you. So we'll talk about this next time, and thank you very much.